These little gems are something that I want to talk to you about. They are brilliant for the front of border. Hello, I'm Rosie Hardy. This is Rosie Hardy Gardening. So today I'm looking at little gems. These are things which are not going to get very tall, that you can put in the front of a border. The majority of them will take quite harsh conditions, because what you have to remember is when you have a front of a border, it does tend to be where the majority of the sun comes. It also tends to be, if you've got a border say up to grass and you are edging it, then you edge down at the side, you have that slight gradient going up to the rest of the border, and that edge there tends to be what dries out the quickest. It tends to be what's in the sun the most, and it's actually quite a harsh environment, and it's somewhere probably where there isn't as much soil. So unless of course you are somebody who's got really good soil. I'm talking about the general garden, and whereby a lot of people, that bit is the bit that gets forgotten to be looked after, as well as say the rest of the border where you mulch really well, because you try not to let your mulch fall down onto your turf or your grass edge. So that is quite a harsh area. Even in a shady spot, that can be quite a harsh environment. Again, it's probably the shallower soil, it's probably the least area where you've got nutrients, etc. So in that type of condition, you are looking for little gems that are perhaps alpine style plants, because alpines are used to harsh environments, they're used to high altitudes. It doesn't mean to say that they don't want some food, but they don't necessarily want to be in soaking wet conditions either. So let's have a little look at these wonderful gems that I've got. And I'm talking about plant material here, which is just that little bit smaller, but will also make beautiful mounds, or most of them will. So let's have a look at this. This is Pulsatilla vulgaris Alba. This is not a big plant, so this is something that will go out onto the front edge. It's never going to make a big impression, but what it does do, has large flowers, beautiful buds. Look at these hairy stems, they're really delicious, and actually they're really smooth, they're lovely. So you have this beautiful green at the back here that offsets the lovely off-white colour. They're not pure white, they're just slightly off-white, and then they have this cut leaf. So they are used to being in a harsher, windy probably, and drier place. They're not going to get huge. When they're in flower, no more than say 4 to 6 inches, so somewhere around about 15 to 20 centimetres, and exactly the same around. So these are ones which will go into those smaller spots, sit there. Once they've finished flowering, they still are of interest, because once the flowers have finished, they put on a beautiful seed head, and this green bract that's around there stays there looking really good as well, because it will open up and fan out. The foliage remains, and it looks good right the way through the summer into the autumn, and then the foliage will go yellow and it will just crinkle up and become brown at the base. Now that sounds awful, but in actual fact, because it is such a cut foliage, it actually looks quite architectural. So it looks like a curled up desiccated leaf, but it will stay there, remain there, and do really well. So this is something for a front edge that's very sunny, poor soils, and it will do really well. Pulsatilla Alba. Now, 1 or 2 of these plants that I've got do tend to be on the white side. So, but white is quite is it a colour? Well, it's a shade. So white is something that a lot of people like to use because it focuses, you can see, and it offsets against other things. Another little one here, this is Iberis sempervivens. Iberis sempervivens is a wonderful thing. It is really sort of sub-shrubby to a certain degree, so it's not totally herbaceous, and from that I mean it doesn't actually get woody at the base, but it also doesn't die right the way back down and reappear. So that is something, so you will always see it there, so it's got some interest through the winter, but it's a front of border. probably not much more than 8 inches, maybe 10 inches, so somewhere around about the 25 centimetre with the flowers. And then once these flower heads have finished, there are more to come here at the base there, so they will look really good. It will be, as I say, sub-shrubby. So what you can see on these stems is the first lot has come up, and then the next lot branching coming out as well. So it makes a lovely little sub-shrub growth there. Dark green foliage, good for the front of border, and that will make to around about probably 25 centimetres, nearly a foot round at the base. So not too tall, but a little bit wider. Really good for the front of border. Now with all of these, if you want a little bit more, then you just plant a few more. It depends on your space that you've got available, but these are really good. They're tough little plants, and you will see the foliage through the winter months. If it's a really harsh winter, then it may lose its leaves, but most winters you will see some foliage on this plant. So that is useful as well. Let's go to something that, let's go for a different colour. Centaureas. Now there are lots and lots of different centaureas out there. These are the perennial cornflower. This tiny little one has beautiful silver foliage. This silver foliage hugs the ground. This will spread around. So this is one of the little gems that actually will spread around and colonize the front of border. You can see even in this container, it is spreading around all the way through there. And what you see here are lots and lots of flower buds still to come. So it puts them on. It doesn't get much taller than it is here. So this is around about 5 inches, I would say. It may, if it's really dry, it will stay lower, but that's beautiful, isn't it? Because you've got this grey foliage and then you've got these wonderful lavender large flowers over the top of this. So, and this little plant, as with a lot of little plants, has a big name. So this is Centaurea triumphetti, subspecies stricta. Big long name, little plant. Love it. It's really a beautiful thing. Dry, full sun, it's great. The foliage will stay being grey, silver for right the way through the summer. In the spring, it's putting up these beautiful flowers. If you want to, you can deadhead, but you don't necessarily have to. I love the beauty of the buds. They're really, really fabulous. The scales on the bud and then these hairs, they just look magical. And when the flower finishes and the petals fall off, you still get to see this wonderful mosaic here of this wonderful bud that is there. So that is good as well. So from my point of view, I think these are wonderful for the front of border because they don't need a lot of soil. They will just gently make a mat and then you get these fabulous flowers coming up. So that is the Centaurea, and it's a lovely different colour. If you want to go yellow, then this Potentilla is fabulous. And again, this is one that puts on masses and masses of flowers right the way through. So this has had one here. This flower has been on the top here. There's more buds to come. So on each of these flower stems here, you will get these beautiful big yellow flowers. And right in the centre of the flower are beautiful dark markings, so it just looks superb. The foliage will make a mound, and the foliage will mound out to around about 18 inches, 45 centimetres, and then the flowers, depending on how good the soil is, it will be anywhere between 6 inches and nearly a foot. So that is dependent really on how good the soil is. If it's poorer soil, slightly shorter. If it's better soil, slightly bigger. So somewhere between the 20 and the 30 centimetres in height with the flower, and it just gets covered in these beautiful yellow blooms. Again, front of border, it will just go out. It will seed a little bit. This is Potentilla megalantha. Potentilla megalantha is a species, so therefore it will seed around. Species tend to be really tough, so it's a great little plant. If you want to reproduce this one, then it's easy to do it from seed. Collect some seed and you do that. It doesn't take over the world with its seeding, so it's not one that's going to become a nuisance either. But I love this for the front, a little bit of bright colour for the front of the border, and beautiful big hairy leaves. So hairy leaves means it can cope with a little bit of dryness. This little one used to be a Gypsophila. It is now an Acanthophyllum. Acanthophyllum cerastioides, border bells. Originally, I got this plant from a little nursery up on the borders in Scotland, and they were called border bells, hence why this one is called that name. The flowers on this particular Acanthophyllum are just slightly larger than the normal Acanthophyllum cerastioides. This is a little spreader, this is a little low ground hugger, really, really fantastic. Now, it's not going to get much taller than it is in this container. So what are we talking? 2 inches, somewhere around about 5-7 centimetres in height, but it's going to go out and just make the most beautiful mound, just wonderful. And then it gets covered in these fabulous flowers. It's literally only just started to flower, so you've got these flowers here, and I just love them. The reverses are superb, and every single growth here has got buds sitting in here. So in this one, you have got the branching. So they come on a branch like that. They put up the first flower. Behind that, there is another flower, another bud, another bud, another bud. So you can understand it is going to just be a mat of these beautiful big flowers. Full sun, free draining soil, absolutely brilliant for the front of an edge, looking really great. And this is a super form. It will take from cutting, so if you can find a piece that hasn't got any buds on, you can take a small tip cutting. It doesn't really get into a size where you can divide it. Not the longest lived of perennials, probably 4 or 5 years, and then you need to replace, you need to rejuvenate. So taking cuttings every other year is probably a good idea, but it is just superb and it will go really well. And I love this little one, especially the fact that it's not pure white. It's just got that lovely veining on it, and that makes all the difference. If you've just got a little bit of some other tone in there, they are fantastic, but just a little low mounding plant for the front of a border. Beautiful little gem, that one. Then we come on to this one, the Veronica. Lots and lots of different Veronicas out there. This one is Mountain Breeze. This comes from the species Camurilliae, and it is basically another one which is a ground hugger. It puts on little rosettes like this all the way round. And what you will find is that those rosettes, if you can see from here, these rosettes are on their own roots. So they are, if this was in the ground, they would have gone out and made a lovely round mat. It is something again that is bordering on an alpine. It is going to make quite large mats, so somewhere to 18 inches across, so it's a really good size, and then it just keeps on putting on these beautiful flower spikes up to this height. So again, we're only talking something between 6 and 8 inches. That is 20 to 25 centimeters, that sort of area, but a spread around here. Semi-evergreen, so you will see all of this, and you don't necessarily have to deadhead, but you can, and it does repeat bloom. So it has a wonderful first flush where it puts on a load of flower like this, and then these will die back, and then it will sporadically keep on putting on blue flower spikes every now and again right the way through the summer. It is a really good form. So unlike Veronica gentianoides, which sort of has a one-off burst, this keeps on blooming and it's really good. They are now trying to use this in breeding to create a gentianoides type that does rebloom. So watch this space, that's going to be quite an interesting one. But it's lovely. It's got dark blue anthers here, lovely blue so it's a lilac blue flower on here, short spikes. And the beauty of these little gems is you don't have to do any staking with them because they all just grow and make really good clumps. So this one will go full sun again and is a beautiful thing for that. So I've got a little collection there of ones that will be front of border for the sun. What about ones which want to go in the shade? Well, these three here will do just that. Let's start with the Epimedium. This is Epimedium, youngianum, Niveum. Now, the youngianum types are deciduous epimediums. So everything that you see here, the foliage, the flowers, everything else has come up this spring. It has beautiful foliage. It's really, really quite small as these lovely little white flowers come out. They look great against the stems because the stems are a lovely sort of, I don't know what you want to call it. It's a brown red, I suppose. And those stems contrast well with the white flowers. Just out, not too tall, and the foliage comes up. It will then make a beautiful clump. It's not one that's going to run around and take over, but it will go in driest shade, and it will go on the front of a border in driest shade. So very, very useful plant. It will tolerate a little bit of sun, so that makes it quite a useful plant as well. And then the foliage, so at the moment the flowers are sitting somewhere here just under a foot, so around about 25 centimetres. It will make a clump probably after 2 to 3 years of around about a foot, so about 30 centimetres. And then once the flowers have finished, they will die off, the foliage will come up, and the foliage will sit at around about that 25 centimetre, just under a foot level. And then when you get to the autumn, the foliage goes the most amazing oranges and reds, loses the whole lot, completely deciduous, dies below ground like a normal herbaceous perennial, and then reappears in the spring. So that is Epimedium, youngianum, Niveum. Really good. If you're wanting a little bit of bright colour for a shady spot, then you can't go far wrong than using Uvalaria. This is Uvalaria grandiflora. Uvalaria grandiflora has lovely long tassel-like tubular flowers in lovely yellow, more of a daffodil yellow, I suppose, on these good strong stems, and this is about the height. So this one's around about 18 inches, 45 centimetres in height. It is a clump former. It is just coming up with buds at the bottom here. There's more flower coming through here, more coming through there, and this is just going to stay in a nice neat clump. It's not going to run around, but I quite like to have things which are just a little bit taller at the front of a border as well, because these are just going to come up and look really good at this time of the year in the spring. Just a lovely wafting. You can see with the breeze now, they just will waft a little bit, so they look like little bells just ringing in the ground. The foliage is always lime green at this time of the year, and then once the flowers have finished, you get a wonderful seed head on there which looks fantastic. The foliage will stay looking reasonable right the way through till the late summer, and then it will gradually die back down again. So a useful shade plant that you can put at the front of the border. Uvalaria grandiflora. It is divisible. And then lastly, the little Tiarella here. This is Tiarella Spring Symphony. These are fabulous. They have the most amazing leaves, which will get bigger as the plant grows out. We don't tend to take the old foliage off these because it doesn't really matter, and unlike their cousin, the heuchera, they do not get a woody centre, so that's quite good with them as well. This is a clump forming Tiarella, and it puts on masses of these beautiful flowers at this time of the year, which have a slight perfume. So by the time you get to the evening, these will be giving off a sort of honey scent, which is fabulous. There are more buds coming through at the bottom of this here, and if you want it to rebloom and get more, rather than cutting off the dead flowers, give them a little tug, and that will encourage them to rebloom more, because they'll just tug out at the bottom, and that will make them create more flower. So these are really good again for the front, for a woodland type border, a shady border, and this sort of colour, they look great. It's sort of a frothy, It's a frothy foam type flower. It's fabulous. And then once it has finished its flowering, the foliage takes over and you get a wonderful mound of foliage. That foliage will go oranges, reds in the autumn months and will sit there semi-evergreen until the spring, and then the new growth comes through that old foliage. Leave the old leaves down there because basically it grows over the top of it. The old leaf will decay and feed the plant as well. So that is something else for the front of border in the actual shade. So we have some really beautiful gems here, ranging in colours through the whites, the yellows, slightly pinks, the lilacs and blues, into the shady stuff as well. Hopefully that just gives you some inspiration for front of border gems. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch another video of mine, YouTube thinks this one is perfect for you.